Welcome back to Me First with your host, Drew, the resident jokester with a heart of gold, and Amanda, optimistic space cadet who sees opportunity everywhere. We dive deep into everything from navigating love and family to crushing your business goals, all with a heaping helping of conversation and good humor. So make sure you subscribe and join the Me First fam. New episodes drop 3 weeks out of every month on the second, third, and fourth Thursday. Want to know more about a specific topic? Let us know in the comments. Welcome back to Me First. Thank you for joining us this week. We have got a great episode for you. This week we are talking about workplace culture and got a question for you. Is your boss the reason that you're sick? We'll talk to you about it today. So before we jump in, Drew, how you doing?
Well, I'm struggling today, but life is good. Everything's good, guys. Got a little sound problem over here. Electronics don't want to work today, but it's a good Saturday.
I'll let y'all know I was over here fighting for my life because I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. I'm like, Drew's like, you hear me now?
My head's cut off.
Head's cut
you
off.
Can't hear me. Yeah, it's just struggle is real today. But it's all good. We're gonna push through. All good. How's your day?
My day is good, and I told you off air I have a story I'd like to tell you. And
yes,
we're talking about workplace culture today. And just to kick us off, this isn't necessarily a workplace culture thing, but it kind of ties in. And it's really about clarity, being very clear with the parameters of your workplace, with what flies, what doesn't, with when you make a request, what is the request? When is the deadline? What is the expectation? And so some of you might not know that I have never cooked a brisket, smoked a whole brisket. And this week, tomorrow actually, I have invited family and some of my closest friends, Drew included, to come and partake in a brisket that I will be smoking and serving. Now, I'm a decent cook. I'm a good cook. And
I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said I'm a good cook. I'm actually more than decent. But
there we go.
I'm feeling a little anxious about this. I called my sister-in-law and I was like, hey, have you ever made a brisket? I'm thinking about having Sunday dinner and this is, what I'd like to make. She's all for it, and we're, figuring out what the sides are going to be, this and that. They're real busy. And she got a new smoker for my brother. And that's what we're going to use for the brisket. And so as I'm doing my research, I'm like, oh, this thing's going to take somewhere between 12 and 18 hours to cook. And so I was like, okay, so this thing is going to need to go on probably before I go to bed. And then, we live a hop, skip, and a jump from one another. But I'm feeling a little apprehensive about putting the meat on, way over there and then, going back and forth. I've got the probe, so I'm going to be able to monitor the temperature. She says, we're super busy and today and so we're not going to be home until later. And I know, you have to bring it over and this and that. Well, what if I brought the smoker to you? Would that work? Now, I didn't want to ask this because it's like his brand new smoker. So in my head, I was like, man, this would really work. I didn't ask that, but she offered it. I was like, oh, is that a possibility? That would be amazing. She's like, yeah, and it would be a huge help to me too. So I'm sitting in my office here. I hear some racket outside and I go out and it's my wonderful nephew and he is bringing me the smoker. He brought over the box truck. He's unloading the smoker. It is in the box, unassembled. And now this is on me, right? I didn't ask the right questions. I did not clarify what was going to be happening. And so I stopped him. I said, hold on. I need to watch a quick video and see what's involved in putting this particular smoker together. And I let him in on a little secret that the last time I put a grill together, it took me over 8 hours. My grill that's in my backyard, it took me over 8 hours to put together. And so I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. I might actually just run up to Home Depot and have them like buy one that's already assembled and I'll just have a smoker because I don't know that I'm gonna be able to put this together. So I told you I would let you know what I'm going to be doing the rest of the day. And that's what I'm going to be doing the rest of the day. And so I thought it was funny because, it was questions I didn't ask, right? And it
Right.
was information that wasn't offered up. But one, when you buy a grill, you have the option, right, of buying one of the ones that are assembled on the floor model. They're usually a little bit more expensive, or you can get it in the box and put it together yourself. And I've always gotten like, I assemble things myself, but when I put that grill together a few years ago, I decided that the next time I interact with the grill, I'm going to be buying it already assembled, because there were so many pieces and I put so many things together wrong and had to take it apart and fix it a couple times. So I thought that was funny coming into this episode, because we're going to be talking about workplace culture. We're going to talk about, the definitions around a good workplace, a bad workplace, and one of the specific pieces of, what is in a good workplace. I think a lot of people will attest that, some of that comes in with clear policies, clear understanding, clear clarity. And some of that is on the employee, right? In this case, I'm the employee and I didn't ask for clarification. So Des,
Like,
if
it's
you're
fine.
watching this, when Gato got here, I was like, hold up. And wait, I don't know
Wait a
how this
minute.
is gonna go, but I'm excited to do it, and I really hope that, and I'm gonna watch the video. I'm gonna do everything right, because brother Jeremy, it's going to be put together properly. It's going to be nice and steady, not like other things I put together. Anywho, let's go ahead and move on. So, as we anywho, man, like, let's not talk about my coffee table if you like, we don't move that by trying, because the whole table will come up. I'm going to do a really, really good job, and I'm glad this episode isn't going to come out until far after, so he's going to listen to it and he's going to be like, let me go and check all these screws.
Shake this thing around.
Just shake this thing around, or just double, triple check. Man. So, so do you feel like that tracks, so that's kind of what came up to mind when we were talking about workplace culture. And I was just thinking, I was looking at that box in my backyard, and I was like, I did not clarify. And this isn't a small grill. And it's not just a grill, it's a smoker. So it's got like a pellet thing on the side.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing, right? And I just thought to myself, you got to ask more questions.
And you're going to do that today.
And trim the brisket and get it seasoned and get it on before I go to bed. Yeah. Because if I don't, guess what we're not having tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds ambitious, but I know you can do it for it.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do it before my bedtime too.
7:30 2.
It's not my bedtime.
Oh,
I stay up till 9 o'clock. I don't have to go to sleep until 9 o'clock, everyone.
9 o'clock? When did it get 9 o'clock, friend? Let's talk about it.
I start winding down around 7:30. That's when, like, things get turned off.
I just want to make sure everybody heard it.
That's when I make my way to the bed.
Okay.
And then I'll do a little reading. I'm doing a Bible study that has taken me way longer than it's supposed to, but on my own time. And I'll do a little reading, and maybe I'll listen to a meditation or something like that.
Okay.
And I might even watch a show. But then I'll be asleep by 9. So, Drew, are you familiar with this? Man, yeah, it's like the way when somebody's trying to communicate with me, the way the communication just stops. I'll wake up and I'll be like, and what I do when I wake up and I see that communication has stopped and there's like a new message, I always look, what time did they send this?
Yeah.
I'm like, did this get sent to me at 7:59? And I was just like, no, done.
It was over. Like, we all know that. But the nice thing about it, you pop back like you never left. You just jump right in the conversation like you were never gone.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. like, yeah.
You're right. I forgot already. I'm like, what is this about? Oh, I got to scroll up.
I got to scroll up a little. Dude, that's so funny. Have you ever heard of the Sunday Scaries?
I haven't. What's that?
You haven't heard of the Sunday Scaries? So like this is what I used to say, and this is what I used to feel. At 3 o'clock on Sunday, I would just get sad. The weekend is over and my me time is done. And now I am in, preparing mode, getting ready for the week, getting ready for the day. Now, I've always loved Mondays. They've always been my favorite day of the week. Now Tuesday, that sucker can kind of go somewhere. Like if it was like weekend and then a bunch of time off and then a Monday and then like go back to some time off, I would love
Yeah.
that. That would be for me. But the Sunday scaries are that feeling that many people describe getting on Sunday before the day before going back to work after the weekend. It's kind of that, for some people it's probably 3 p.m. for me because I go to sleep early. For some people it's 5 or 7 o'clock on a Sunday when they start to
Yeah.
feel some kind of way about you know tomorrow is work.
Makes sense. I think I'm thinking of calling it something different, but we'll save that for another time. So yes, I am familiar with what you're saying.
I'm so interested at what we're calling it.
We're saving
Is it
that.
going to get us flagged?
Yeah. Take the whole video down.
Take the whole video down. Can't do it. It's like I'll have to check that box. Yes. When I post it on YouTube, it's like, yeah, man, well, the Sunday scaries happen, and arguably some of that can have to do with a toxic workplace culture, with a workplace culture that really, doesn't make people feel excited to be going to work and feeling like they are accomplishing something really important. According to a MIT Sloan Management Review article, 1 in 5 employees have left a job due to toxic culture. So 20%. And that is where businesses are failing. More and more companies have a bad workplace culture, and leadership is to blame, in my opinion. At the end of the day, I believe it starts at the top. And the question that I ask to you, those who are listening, do you dread going to work on Monday morning? And where are those feelings coming from? So before we really dive too deep into talking about a bad workplace culture, really want to talk about, what is workplace culture? What does a good culture look like? And what does a not so good culture look like? And how do those sometimes even blend together where, it's not necessarily black and white? I've heard of places where, the team culture is really strong, phenomenal. People love and enjoy their teams, but the overall workplace culture is not something that, the company culture is not something that they're excited about. And in the past, I've seen companies like Meta and Google get called out positively for great workplace culture because you can do things like bring your dog to work, or they have free meals, breakfast, lunch, and some tech startups, and I want to say Google at one point had dinner available, but to me, I don't want to be at work long enough to be having dinner provided. That's just me.
But it is a perk. I can say prior to me working where I currently work, I worked at a place that offered, they had like the big commercial refrigerators, and
Yeah.
they had energy drinks, they had water, they had soda, they had juice, they would bring in fresh fruit. They also had a place cater food, and then they
Yeah.
would meal prep it essentially after everybody had eaten, and it would be in the refrigerator, and then they would just come back and rotate it out. And so I mean, it's small, but it was big.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to
It
worry if
is.
somebody forgot their lunch or whatever, and you didn't have to worry about paying for those things.
Yeah.
The company totally took care of you. You had snacks, chips and
Oh, yeah.
whatever else.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
And
was
it's not
great.
like, yeah, and it's not like, little packaged like sandwiches and stuff like that. Like, it's real food. And
Yeah.
now those free meals are, I think, really, really great. When I was at Sunrun, one of the things that we had was a snack program, and we had, energy drinks and bubbly water and iced teas. And then we had banana chips and gummy bears and, chips and pita and hummus and veggie packs and, cheese and like all of these different things that people could grab as a snack, pretzels. And I'm just thinking
Right.
of, and Now, what I also remember is when the snacks would get refilled, people would rush to the kitchen and hoard,
Yeah.
hoard the
Yeah.
snacks. So, there is a little bit of a challenge there. But recently, well, and I agree. I think I personally think that's a great perk. If you expect people to be with you for hours in a day, I think there's nothing wrong. There's actually a really good positive in providing healthy, fueling type
Right.
meals, things that are high protein, that have, veggies involved and all of that stuff. Now, the challenge comes in when it's always pizza or something like that, and
Right.
soda, and like when you're and then, people are crashing, their
Yeah.
productivity is going down. So there's some positivity in that. But recently, Meta's in the news for firing some workers for misusing their Grubhub meal voucher program to buy household items, or by going over budget on the voucher program.
Mhm.
So posts on an anonymous work social message board called Blind appeared to confirm some elements of that story, which originally was reported in the Financial Times. Now, one user wrote that more than 30 people were fired last week. This is the quote: because they used the extra credits for non-food items, they shared credits with people, or they went above budget. Examples of the non-food items bought included toothpaste, toothbrushes, and wine glasses. They were given a warning to stop, which most of them did, but they were still fired 3 months later, even after stopping, the user said. Now, I don't know how over budget these folks went, but at the end of the day, it seems like a bad look for the company to me. What do you think?
I would agree that seems pretty excessive. I would say, everything to me is a necessity that they may need. You want them to show up to work. You want them to have good hygiene. You want people to be productive. I'm
Yeah.
not seeing, the issue. And then, of course, if they were issued a warning and then most of them stopped and then they still were terminated, yeah, that's absolutely a bad look, in my opinion.
And, I was thinking through this, and I'm thinking to myself, what is the reason for, such a sharp reprimand on something
Yeah.
like that? Like, and I think about my leadership style, like, I don't care if you buy toothpaste or, Wingstop. Like,
Right.
well, don't, anywho, let's not talk about which wing place to go to. But
Let's not go there.
I was like, why did I say Wingstop? I'm not a Wingstop person. Wait, no, I am Wingstop.
You
Wingstop
do
is the
like
green.
we like Wingstop.
We like Wingstop. I was
We
thinking
do.
Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm
We
sorry, I
don't.
didn't mean to call out Buffalo Wild Wings. I don't eat your
Sorry,
guys'
B
stuff.
Dub.
Your sauces are weird.
And the chicken, like, is too big. Like,
It's
it's doing a lot.
odd. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on that I'm not positive
Yeah.
that
But I will say Wingstop is on a wing and a prayer right now because they are not properly behaving when cooking these wings. That chicken, I know the cost of food is up, but the chicken is entirely too much for it to not be good.
no,
Every
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have to, because now they're to the point you have to walk in there. Don't order it because you have to walk in there. You got to look at it. You got to examine it because they're
Man,
just doing some other stuff right now. So I just want to put that out there. Wingstop, let's get
I
it
wonder if
together.
they're understaffed. Sounds like some issues with consistency there.
Could be. They got some little young whippersnappers working in there now. They don't know about cooking chicken. When I walked in one day, I said, "Listen," I said, "Fry my chicken hard." The lady was like,
What that mean?
what that is?" I said, "Ma'am, don't bring me no slimy chicken up here. That thing gonna be crunchy, okay?" Yeah, she was
Lord. If someone comes into your wing establishment, says fry my chicken hard, and your people don't know, like, that should
yeah,
be part of the glossary. Like,
exactly, like fry my chicken hard.
employee handbook. That phrase needs to be, man.
Yeah, she was so confused. The young man from the back, he was like, "Cook it longer." I was like, "Thanks, thank you,"
Yeah,
because
like whisper in your ear like you're embarrassing yourself.
get it together. Yeah, poor thing, but that's all right.
Yeah. So I'm just like, and then on the other side of it is there are vouchers. So
Yeah,
shouldn't Meta be managing that with Grubhub? Like, if they have such a like, it's a Grubhub voucher, they're getting the stuff off of Grubhub. Now they're
right.
like, you're supposed to use it for lunch or breakfast or a meal, and it's like,
Exactly.
and I like, it makes me think of when I was at a solar company that ended up with a partnership with Nike. One of the rewards was these points that you can use in the Nike store. At some point, I don't need another Nike backpack, another Nike t-shirt, another, like, at some point, someone just doesn't want that fast food. And some people were using them for grocery items instead. Like, it's like, okay, the company is authorizing that I get lunch. Okay, well, I'm gonna get some salad mix from Safeway and some, some chicken and some this and some that, and then I'm gonna prep my lunch at home. And no, no,
Right.
no, like that's not what that's for. You better get a burger from Five Guys.
Right.
Like,
Like what?
it seems like such a, it's like these companies, they're trying to do. They're like, hey, we have this great perk, you did it wrong, let's
Yeah.
punish you for it. And
Right.
it's kind of
Right.
like, why so
Yeah.
serious, son?
Yeah.
You know?
I would agree. I would agree. That seems definitely a little over and beyond. And like you said, it could be something that probably could be managed from the back end, like a FSA card or HSA. There are only certain things you can get on those cards
Yeah.
because they do have boundaries to them. So how, if they could do it, I'm sure that it could work
Yeah.
the same way, and then you can just
Yeah.
prevent all of that, because
Yeah.
you're always going to have people who push the envelope a little bit. It happens.
Yeah. I'm
It
going to put in
happens.
this little code when I have my, whatever, my ice cream bars or whatever it is that I decide. I'm going to put in this little code. If the code works, I'm going to assume voucher's good for ice cream
We're
bars.
good.
We're good, And
Yeah.
so I that story was very interesting to me, because I was kind of like, as I read it, I was just like, this seems like something that is a smaller thing than it has to be, that ends up creating a challenge for an organization that maybe improperly highlights culture issues, where it's kind of like, some folks might not think of that as a culture issue, but there are 6 key elements to a positive workplace culture according to several research sources, and they are: prioritize employee well-being, offers support, encourages respect, trust, empathy, and has clear policies. So my question to you is, at first look, do you feel like this move from Meta to fire these folks align with a positive workplace culture? And if not, which of prioritize employee well-being, offers support, encourages respect, trust, empathy, and has clear policies did it not align with?
Well, I'm gonna go. No, this would not scream a positive work culture to me. And I would
Yeah.
say that it probably is misaligned with a few of these, but definitely having clear policies and not offering support, because if people are making a mistake based on the company not outlining and defining clear policies, is that an employee problem or is it an employer problem? To me, they should
Exactly.
take the responsibility and say, hey, we have failed to give you guys clear guidelines. That's on us. So let's revamp, let's revisit this, retrain,
Yeah.
and let's move forward. Not fire 30 people because they did the wrong thing, quote unquote. That maybe they
Yeah.
didn't know was the wrong thing. So
Yeah.
I would say no. I
Well, and then
definitely
according
think,
to the,
excuse me,
you passed
it's
that to me.
contagious.
It's contagious. No, and then even according to the person on Blind, they were saying that these folks were warned, corrected,
Sometimes. Mm-hmm.
and then fired later, even
Yeah.
after there were no more
Right.
infractions. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
Yeah.
that's strange.
Mm-hmm. Very. And what's the reason for that? And how would they think that would, scream positive culture? That definitely is a lack of trust. We
Yeah.
had the
Yeah.
conversation. I've done what you've asked me to do and made the correction, and then I still lose my job for that. Absolutely a breach in trust there.
Yeah. No, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And, you obviously have to have rules, you have to have standards. Like I said earlier, I don't really care if someone uses it to buy burgers or toothpaste. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah,
If
guess
I'm
that
the
would be
leader, I
my
don't care.
question to the company. If I was, coming in and I'm like, hey, what's the issue here? Why was that such a problem? Toothpaste, toothbrush, because I'm sure it's clearly defined somewhere that you have to be appropriate with your hygiene. You want people to be
Yeah.
presentable. I'm sure you have those policies in place. So why would that be an issue? I could see alcohol, things like that. But why would this be the problem? I
Yeah.
would want some
Yeah, and
understanding
I
with
guess
that.
somebody bought wine glasses, which it's like,
Did they
okay.
buy the wine? I
Yeah, and
like to drink my
I'm like they
cranberry
sell
juice.
wine glasses on Grubhub. You gave me a Grubhub voucher. I'm
Exactly.
trying to have a wine glass at my desk from now on because
Exactly.
I'm here. I just want to feel so like I think I thought about that question of like why does it even matter? And what I came up with, and this is just me, I haven't done the research on this. I was thinking maybe they have this program like sat under a specific part of the budget that aligns with meals, and somehow that their tax write off that they're get because they're not just giving these meals away, right? So the
Absolutely.
tax write off that they get aligning with that, I figured it probably had something to do with that. Like, hey,
Which
we
is
wrote this
fair.
under here. If you guys are
Yeah,
doing this, it doesn't, we
absolutely,
don't want
which
to
is
be committing
fair.
fraud.
But if you are executive leadership, I'm individual contributor. I don't know the back
I
end
don't know
business.
that.
I
Yeah.
don't have a clue what's going on back there. So again, the responsibility falls on the employer to say
Hmm.
these are the guidelines that you need to fall within, because I have no idea how it works on the back end. Not my
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. And, I think one piece that I don't see here is so we've got prioritizing employee well-being, offer support, etc., etc. One thing that I don't see here is transparency, and I do believe
Love
that
that.
that is a challenge with transparency because a lot of leaders have a problem with knowing how much to share or
Yes.
how to share sensitive things. If they're like, well, we don't want to talk about budget line items, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like, why not? Like, if you tell an employee like, hey, as an organization, we're writing this off under meals. And if we get audited and you're doing a bunch of toothpaste purchases, like,
Yeah.
hey, you can buy that under your FSA, which we
Right.
match, this amount every
Yeah.
year. So like you can, if you're just transparent and explain it, then people are going to understand better.
Yeah. You can get them to buy in the vision if you just be true. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, that kind of begs the question of what does bad workplace culture look like? And I'm not saying that Meta has a bad workplace culture. I've never worked there. What I am saying is that this instance to
Yeah.
me looked like an opportunity to improve in the culture. And so when we talk about toxic or bad workplace culture, we're talking about dysfunctional behavior. We're talking about drama, infighting, poor communication, low
Hmm.
morale, not prioritizing employee well-being. And then we have what are called the toxic five. So disrespectful, non-inclusive, unethical, cutthroat, and abusive. So
Use.
Uber, for instance, has been publicly criticized for its toxic work environment since 2017. There was a blog post by Susan Fowler, who was a former employee, and she talked about in detail sexual harassment and discrimination that she endured as an employee there. And her allegations, numerous other reports emerged, and it was deemed, or I guess the New York Times described Uber's company culture as aggressive and unrestrained. And then we have, the famous, infamous Amazon, which they have been described as having a challenging and demanding company culture that's led to mixed employee experiences. Now, I
Can I just
found,
throw out there that they had
yeah.
me for about a half a day? Okay. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I love Amazon as far as shopping, but when I tell you they want slaves, they don't want me. Okay. Because, oh man, yeah, oh
Man,
man, that's a tough environment. Kudos to anybody that
who can
works
make
at
it?
Amazon. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's a tough environment.
yeah,
I mean, even just going because it's so big, the warehouses. So the time off task or time on task, whatever they call it. Oh, if you're not actively working for an amount of time, but it takes a minute to even get to the restroom because they're so far apart. I mean, the building is huge. It's just some of the things they have some great perks, but
yeah.
that environment and just how you need to work, how you need to, it's tough. It's a tough, yeah. At
Yeah,
lunchtime, I was like, Gotta go, y'all.
That's crazy. Like I remember Katie, when she worked in a warehouse and she would tell me, so they had a half hour for lunch and the bell rings for lunch. Everyone takes lunch at the same time. And when the bell rings, the walk to the break room is a solid 5 minutes, and then the walk back is 5 minutes. So really you're only getting 20 minutes for lunch. And if you
Exactly.
need to use the restroom and I was like,
Yeah.
you need to quit. That's how I
Now.
felt about it. I was like, I wouldn't survive in that environment because I'm gonna be dragging my feet. Like I've been standing on my feet for
Yeah.
for 4 hours.
Yeah.
We're going assembly line type situation, and or going around on the warehousey areas, and you're gonna
Which areas are
the
you going around?
warehousey areas.
Okay,
I've never
got it.
obviously worked anywhere near a warehouse. We're doing warehouse things,
Got it.
and you're gonna steal 10 minutes of my break, and you're not allowed to eat on the floor. So it's not like if you brought your lunch, it's not like you could start, because I'm like, I would be eating my lunch on the way there. No, you can't do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
You can't be on your phone on the floor even if it's break time, for safety reasons, of course. But yeah, so no, and Amazon has been described as having a demanding company culture, and some people love it. Some people have said this is amazing. One source noted that while some employees thrive in Amazon's fast paced, brutal environment, others find it unsustainable. Now, some people who have worked at Amazon have used terms like bruising, relentless, churn and burn to describe their time there. However, some employees just really love the intense work style, and they suggest that some people just respond differently to different work environments. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the methodology and the mindset behind Amazon's work philosophy, but for me, if my workplace is being described using the word bruising, now relentless can be positive or negative, right? Churn and burn. I don't want my business to be associated with
You don't want to be a
that.
churner and burner? It's not for
I
you?
don't want to
No.
be a churner and burner, right? And the solar industry has experienced some of these kind of names of and descriptions of people getting hired, inadequate training. It's kind of like sink or swim, survivor or don't. And that's something I've always strove. I believe that is the word. It might be strived, but I think it's strove to not embody in my leadership career. I don't want to be, looked at as the place where you come and you get hired and I'm not going to do my part, and if you somehow miraculously survive, then you're an amazing employee. I had a former employee reach out to me who had been being courted for a leadership role at a solar organization that I had left. And one of the recruiting calls that he received stated, "We're not going to be training anyone. We're just going to find people who have done this before," meaning solar sales, "and either they survive or they don't. We'll give them about 4 weeks to build a business. And if they haven't made, enough sales, then we're just going to cut them. And this is the type of business that you would be leading." When I tell you, this is one of the most integrous people I know. I stay connected with this gentleman because not only is he a incredible sales professional, he has deep integrity. When I tell you, he told me his fingers flew to my phone number and called me and was like, "You won't believe." Unfortunately, I had to tell him, actually, I do believe.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate, but these are kind of the types of environments that some leaders are building, and they think that it's okay.
Absolutely.
And there is a stark contrast between a positive environment and a toxic environment. It begs the question, are bosses to blame, right? Is your boss the reason you're sick, right? There are some shocking truths about toxic workplaces. The Surgeon General's report stated chronic stress from workplace abuse leads to depression, heart disease, and more. Quiet quitting, the great resignation. We've all heard the I think it was a Kim Kardashian quote that went viral, the sound, nobody wants to work anymore. They're, again, toxic culture is 10 times more powerful than compensation in predicting turnover. People will stay in a place where they feel that they are not quite compensated at the level they should be longer and with more, loyalty than 10 times more than if the workplace culture is toxic. They're 10 times more likely to just leave. And that is a huge risk to businesses, to their financial outcomes, to their reputation as a company.
Yeah.
And like I said, leadership is to blame. The buck stops at leadership. And if you are in a leadership seat, you are setting the tone for the company's culture. Upper leadership, executive leadership should be embodying and making sure that that is flowing all the way through all of their organization. And that's where there's a big challenge, that managers aren't being held accountable for fostering healthy environments. They're being held accountable for financial outcomes. They're being held accountable for turnover, or, you have some managers who are sitting in positions where their turnover is, 2 or 3 or 4x fold of their hiring. And the employees are being blamed over and over and over. Oh, that was a bad hire. That was this, that was that. Well, your culture is crap is what it is. And not saying that every person that you hired should have been hired, but if you have bad hiring practices, you probably have a leadership team who doesn't truly understand what your culture is and how to hire. They haven't been trained. They're not getting training and development as leaders.
I think the development for leaders is lacking. So what we see, and even I can even speak to my own leadership path. When I first got into leadership, it was just like, you were so great at being an individual contributor, you should be a manager. And it's like, looking back, it was like, no, I shouldn't have been. No, that's not exactly what I should have did. Because there was a time where I can safely say today, I was a horrible leader, horrible. And I had to learn over time, turnover, people just flat out telling me like, hey, listen, you have XYZ problem, this is how I feel about you. And getting to a mature place in my leadership, I think, to be able to accept that, because it's hard to hear crappy stuff about yourself, but your employees will tell you if you're crappy or not. They will let you, everybody will have those one-offs of people that just don't care for you. Cool. But if you have the majority of your staff that just doesn't rock with you, then, you might have a problem. But, what I see is a lot of arrogance, a lot of self-centeredness as far as managing. And it's like, you're here to guide and lead your team. This isn't all about you. This isn't your show. And I think that is so very lacking right now. But like you touched on the leadership, no one is teaching anybody how to be a leader. You were good at doing your job, so they slipped you into this leadership role, and now you're responsible for outcomes for the business, and you're responsible for people. So if you have 10 staff, you got 10 personalities. Now you have to learn how to manage, and it's not easy. It's not an easy task.
It's not easy. And, to your point, yes, you will have one-offs where you've got, a wackadoo employee who is just off in la la land, and that's not always going to be your fault. Right. It's not your fault. It's your responsibility to a point but if you have multiple employees and peers giving you similar or the same feedback, you have to be able to accept that feedback and use it to grow as a leader. I remember getting some feedback that really shook me. It pissed me off. And in the role that I was in, I was ready to quit. I was like, this person's just picking on me and telling da 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 da. Now, all of it wasn't, I don't think, was completely accurate, but there was a good amount of information that I was able to use to grow as a leader, improve my capabilities, my style, the way that I showed up. And I'm the type of person that I'll get real mad and be all fired up. And I wasn't fired up to, like, as I was getting the feedback. I
Right.
was pissed off when I got home. But after I cool down, which usually only takes a couple hours, I can sit and, oh, you know what? If I look back on this scenario, what was my part?
Mm-hmm.
What do I have control over? And there are a lot of people who are put in leadership positions who can't do that. They cannot objectively look at themselves and see issue.
Yeah.
To them, they are doing everything perfectly and everyone else is the problem. And if
Right.
everybody just listened to me and did it my way. So one of the big things that I had an issue with was I was pushing my team really hard and I couldn't fathom to understand why such and such wouldn't make more phone calls and just kind of be better at the selling role and want it more.
Right.
I expected everyone to be able to work the way that I worked.
Yeah.
And that was a problem because it wasn't resonating with them in the same way. And so instead of figuring out how to better support and motivate the different personalities, I wanted everyone to cookie cutter, like, this is what I did to be successful. Do this, you will be successful. You're complaining to me in a one-on-one about not having enough sales. You're also not doing all the things I told you to do. So you suck and I don't really want to hear it, as opposed to, hey, the last time we spoke, we went through and looked at, this, and this being important things that if you implemented them, we would see some changes. Now, I've listened to some calls recently, and here are a couple of things that I'm still not seeing implemented. Can you talk to me a little bit about where you're struggling with that so that I can help? As opposed to, I told you to do this, you're not doing this, go do this, and it will be successful. I've got other things to do.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Now, I would never use those words with an employee, but that
Right.
was essentially what they were getting from me. And when it was brought to my attention, I was just like, they have the ability to make X number of money this year. They said they needed to do that because they have a daughter, they have this goal. I'm trying to get them there. So I don't know what she's boohoo crying about.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt, right? And so I wanted everyone to be able to see it from my perspective, and that's not how it works.
Oh, not at all. I definitely have had my fair share of that too. Like, so you can't, I can do it. I'm like, what's the issue here? It's just like, dude, nobody's like you. You know what I'm saying? They have their own individual contributions they're gonna bring, and you need to tap into that and see how
Yeah.
what they can use to make themselves better. Because it's like they're not gonna ever be you. You're just gonna always have a different style. But I certainly
Yeah.
was guilty of that myself. And I think what really helped me. I mean, I was young when I started managing.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
really
Same.
no guidance, and so I'm doing what I've seen and what people have shown me, and not really understanding the impact that
Yeah.
has on your staff. And it's like, man, and even I would
Yeah.
say most recently when I stepped out of managing and became an individual contributor again is when I really got to sit down and say, okay, you were doing XYZ, you hate that. How did you make some other people feel when you were behaving this way? And it's just like, bro. So now, if
Yeah.
going back, should I
Yeah.
choose to go back into that role, I really can identify and kind of pinpoint some things that certainly would need to be rectified, or that I just wouldn't do anymore. Because, yeah, being an
Yeah.
individual contributor it's tough when you have poor leadership. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It really can
It
make the
really, really
days
is.
hard. It's just like, because the work is going to be what the
It
work is going
makes
to
it
be.
not fun. The
Oh
work is
yeah,
going to be, and
yeah.
yeah, and it makes it not fun. And that's, earlier we started this conversation talking about the Sunday scaries, and a lot of that is where those scaries are coming from, because they feel like, people feel like when they get to the office or to the workplace or to the work site, they're not going to be supported. They're,
Hmm.
not going to get, what they need. I remember, I don't know if I've told this story on the pod before, but I remember I was managing this store with a restaurant organization that I was with in the past, and I would often get calls, and like the phone would ring around shift change, and servers would pick up the phone, and I would be, in the office, I'm, counting in, or I'm doing reading the red book or whatever, and someone would call out, "Hey, man, did you just get here, or are you closing?" And, "Oh, I'm closing," or, "No, I'm mid. I'm gonna be here until, it dies down," or whatever. And then, da 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 da, and then the phone call would end. And after a few times, I just thought that was weird. I was like, "Why do you always answer the phone and then ask me if I'm closing?"
Yeah.
And they're like, some of the servers, they call in to see who the manager is going to be, or the closing cooks call in to see who the manager is going to be, because they want to know if they're
Hmm.
getting slammed. And this was happening on Fridays and on Saturday. If they
Hmm.
want to know if they get slammed, are they going to be supported?
Yeah.
Like, I come to find out there were managers who wouldn't greet tables or bus tables or jump
Yeah.
on they didn't know each station. They wouldn't bust suds and wash dishes if they needed to. They wouldn't get out if we ran out of prep, and like be like, "Okay, I'm gonna prep this for you guys because I know we're getting slammed." And because I had come from doing those jobs,
Right.
for me, I think and also, like, what do I look like just walking around with keys, and you
Right.
do
While your team is
the
struggling, like,
restaurants going down around. But come to find out, there were some of
yeah.
my counterparts who did walked around with keys, and if the dish pit was getting run over, and the dishwasher person was our backup fry cook, and if fry was getting slammed and the dishwasher would go over there, and then the dish pit's getting backed up and now there's no silverware, they wouldn't go in and run silverware. They would ask some of the servers who are running around with their like trying to stay above float, starting to stay afloat, to do it. And that, things like that are what cause people to get those Sunday scaries, is if they think they're going to get to their place of work and they're not going to be supported. They're not going to be valued, and they're going to be basically fighting for their life
Yeah.
for, whatever shift they have. And
Totally
so that
agree.
kind of, you don't want to feel like you're treading water, or you're just barely
You
keeping your
don't.
nose above
And
water.
then the crappy part sometimes, which I tend to experience in my current situation, is it's like you're fighting for your life. You're doing all you can. You have leadership that's just like, "You did yet? Okay." You're not, keep going. And then when it doesn't
They're
go,
all
right,
tapping on
exactly.
you like,
When it doesn't go the way that they envisioned that it would go, now you're having the conversation. You know what I'm saying? It's not, "Dang, I didn't support them. I didn't jump in and help when I saw them struggling." It's like, "Why
yep.
didn't you meet the numbers?" So do we need to talk about that? Let's have a one-on-one. It's like, bro, let me give you a one-on-one.
It's like,
What do
no,
you
like a
mean?
one-on-one is not going to do anything. What happened was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
like,
And that's exactly the thing. Are you willing to jump on the phone when it's needed? Not, are you in a leadership position, but instead of leading your team, coaching and developing them, you're doing the tasks all the time.
right.
That's another side of it, where it's like, no, you can't be doing the tasks when you're not needed to do the tasks. Like, that's what the
Yeah.
people are there for. You're supposed to
Yeah.
be leading them, encouraging them, helping them, training them, making things better.
Yeah.
But if the ship is going down, are you going to grab an oar?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Like, we got
know,
to stay afloat. And
mm-hmm.
they don't have that right now. And even when I was coming up in my management, I remember I had a operations executive leadership say to me, "I think you have the wrong idea of your supervisor." And I just was like, "No, I think you have the wrong idea, because if the job is not to jump in and support and to help when it's needed, what is the job?" Like, yeah, we got to run numbers. Yes, we have to get the results. But if your people feel supported and appreciated, they're going to give you 110%. But sometimes they may just need a little help. You know, and it's
Yep.
like managers just like, no, I shouldn't have to do those things. It's like, why? Why wouldn't you want to be so well versed in your business that you know every single role in there? So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
needed, you can jump in. But it's like these managers, they don't have a clue. They just show up, they do payroll, they do the schedule, and then it's like, oh, I'm going home. And to
Yeah,
me,
and if yeah,
that's just
exactly.
not
And
the way.
if it was needed, if something came down to where it was needed, they
Yeah,
wouldn't be able
right,
to help and support anyways.
right.
It wouldn't be a thing. And so, so that let's transition a little, but have you ever heard of purposeful Darwinism? So, this term was used by a former Amazon human resources director, and purposeful Darwinism is a term used to describe Amazon's workplace culture where employees who don't perform well are either fired or leave the company. So, some say, and I said we were going to come back to Amazon a little bit. Some say that Amazon's culture is characterized by no middle ground, no mercy, no holding back. Amazon uses an anonymous feedback tool called the Anytime Feedback Tool,
Mm-hmm.
where people are giving anonymous feedback, essentially snitching on
Mm-hmm.
people. Employees are encouraged to criticize coworkers, which can make the work environment hostile. And then no stopping. Employees may work long hours on holidays, weekends, and at night. They may also be criticized for not being available when on vacation. And, Amazon has three, right, distinctly separate business pieces, right? They've got the corporate, they've got the warehouse, and then they've got the delivery and logistics business. So there are people that say that these are positive qualities in a business, but for me, it begs the question, where are we going as a society? Like, are
Yeah.
we on the right path as a society? No middle ground, no mercy, no holding back, no stopping. And that's what is driving, arguably one of the top, five companies in our country. And that's what it is that they say is going to that they attribute to their success. But again, we're going back to that churn and burn, that
Yeah.
sink or swim. Either you're a good fit or you're not. And to some degree, conceptually, I understand that, but that also creates a scenario where you're not going to be able to have a truly diversified culture, because if you don't fit this mold, if you're
Mhm.
not this type of person, you're not going to do well here. To a point that can work, but where are we going?
Long term, I don't see it. You need a variety of people, and everybody's not going to be, their performance is not going to be over and beyond. Some people are just going to
Yeah.
come, they're going to give you exactly what you need, and they're going to go home, and that's all right.
Yep. Yeah, and for some people the question is going to be, well, yeah, I'm in a situation where I'm experiencing some of these things and it's not really sitting well with me. So, what do you do if you're in a toxic workplace? How do you
That is a great
deal
question.
with that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I often ask myself the same question. And I'm going to tell you the reason why I ask this question, because I have been on the leadership side of it. I've been on the individual contributor side of it, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it from a few angles. Unfortunately, sometimes for the individual contributor, it can get very tricky how to maneuver a toxic culture, because you're just at a place, I believe, where you don't have the influence to change it. You don't. That's going to have to
Mm-hmm.
come from some executive leadership. Like you said, it has to start at the top and kind of,
Yeah.
work its way down through all the leadership. And so
Yeah.
I just believe that you're going to have a hard time. So my take on that, and I know we got some great points to hit, is that if you are in a toxic work environment, you got to leave.
You're like, run.
You got to leave, because it will change you long before you change it. And I truly
Yeah.
believe that, because I think you have HR leaders that, of course, they work for the company. Let's make no mistake about that. They work for the company. They are there to protect their assets and the liability that you are bringing to them. Yeah, it'd be nice if you found one that kind of has a balance, but at the end of the day, they work for the company. So it's like, where's the outlet? Where do you turn to say, this is my problem, I need help? Because I've
Yeah,
just
because
seen it go negative for people.
yeah, and there's actually an interesting point that I'll make on the HR side, but there's, to your point, when you feel like you have nowhere to turn, or you did turn somewhere, and because HR's role is to protect the company, to mitigate risk, to make sure that we are firing people in a way that we are not going to get sued. That's the goal, right?
Right.
So what do you do? And some advice that's given is document the incidents of abuse or harassment. Now, my mom taught me a process called CYA, and some of you may be very familiar with this process, and I am a big believer in it. I would keep a little notepad, digital, and when something happened, when I asked for something, when I was given, right, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to just jot it down, just the date, the time, what happened, who it happened with, right? And continually, like, making sure that you jot those things down so that you have a record of your experience, and you're not trying to come up, well, I think it was around October.
Yeah.
Like, no,
Yeah, you
you
need to
need to
jot in
know.
real time, in the moment. Yeah, if you're gonna
In the moment.
document, yeah, it has to be in the moment. Don't try to go
Yeah.
back and remember.
Who was around? Did anyone witness it, right? So you need to document those incidents. You need to consult the employee handbook for reporting procedures, like, and also consult the employee handbook, because a lot of these leaders have never read the dang employee handbook. They don't know the
Yeah,
policies.
yeah,
HR is not, running regular meetings or one-on-ones or training events with the leaders, and if they are, they're not going over the policies and procedures and making sure that they do. They're rolling the handbook out and then having everybody check a box saying I acknowledge it, but they don't truly know their own policies. And you may know those policies better than them and actually be able to advocate for yourself better. Consider
absolutely.
contacting an HR or a legal professional that does not work for the company that you're with. Look for a new job. Like, sometimes you just have to cut bait, and you got to ask yourself, what is the benefit going to be? Am I going to benefit more by staying here and trying to go against the current
Yeah,
and change this whole place?
yeah,
Or, do I just need to just cut bait? You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them, know when
that's
to
it.
walk away, and know when to run.
That's it. 'Cause you have to be in places that I think align with your
Yeah.
values, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes people forget that. And of course, when people start offering money and they start offering promotions, and then you forget about
Mm-hmm.
those things. But at the end of the day, no matter how much money you make or what your title is, if something does not align with you and your morals and your values, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to
And
be
I
a
mean,
good
we're talking
situation.
about, yeah, we're talking about people having heart attacks at work, people having, blood pressure issues, and,
Hmm.
different issues that are literally either stemming from or exacerbated by
Yes.
their workplace. And, it probably seems performative to say, but in some of these situations, it could be life or death for you.
Mhm.
Like, if it's a really, really bad environment, it can, people are dealing with depressions, and they're being gaslit, and that is a whole, heck of a not good, experience for someone to have. And you know I want to point out before we move on that there's a recent lawsuit that was, the lawsuit started in 2020, and what happened was an employee at the SHRM, so the Society for HR for Human Resources Management. They are the guiding organization for folks, right? They give their certifying body, all of these different things. There's an employee there who went and brought a complaint of favoritism, that their direct leader favored her white counterparts over anyone else in the org, and it was an issue. And so she brought this complaint, and what ended up happening was it wasn't investigated, and instead she was given a 2 projects with deadlines that seemed unreasonable. And in the lawsuit, it stated that the HR team started drafting her termination papers one or either that same day or possibly 2 days after she brought the complaint. Now, it's a little unclear if she completed the assignments on task, but what she brought up was, and she was fired. She was fired for not meeting the deadline. Now, when she was fired for like habitually missing deadlines. She brought back her reviews, and she's like, my reviews say that I'm an exemplary employee. Another employee or former employee came to her side, was like, we miss deadlines all the time. Deadlines were just kind of arbitrary numbers. I miss deadlines. And it was a white employee that came to her side and was like, I miss deadlines all the time. Nobody ever does nothing to me. So to say that she's being fired for missing deadlines, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So if the foremost HR organization is getting culture wrong internally, where do we really stand?
Yeah. Goodness. That's tough.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say I'm surprised, and you know, it's unfortunate to feel that way, but I mean, I've seen it. You know, I've seen employees at one company I worked for. An employee went to HR and complained about a manager mistreating them,
Mm-hmm.
and so their move was, let's watch video and see what we can find. So they saw this employee grab a sandwich, open it. Now they paid for it later, but the policy said that you had to pay for it up front, and they terminated them. All because they made a complaint. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that you see sometimes. So when people are like, I'm not talking to HR, I'm not doing that. You know, even in my own recent experience, you know, you and I have talked about said bottle throwing incident, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with HR, and the move, I think, because they didn't understand my background, they thought that it was something that I wasn't going to pay attention to. But their move was basically, let's sit down, let's gauge the temperature on where she is and what she's going to do, and if she's chill or
Mm-hmm.
not, because that's all it was. It wasn't to
Mm-hmm.
rectify the behavior that had just happened
Yeah.
from a leader, you know?
It
And it's like, those
wasn't.
are the kind of things.
Yeah. There was a scenario when I was a trainer. I was training a class of new hire solar consultants, and I think I had 10 new consultants in this group. And there was a gentleman who I believe he was of Middle Eastern descent, and his name was Muhammad, and he was virtual. He was the only person who was virtual. And so I had him up on the screen, had the people in the class. There was another employee or new hire who, he was, an interesting character. But what ended up happening was the virtual gentleman was just a tiny bit late getting onto the screen. He was having trouble getting onto the screen. And this was before COVID. We had kind of just put together our virtual training process. And we were because before that, trainers were literally flying in and everyone was flying in. So we were like, well, I think we can probably do this virtually. We have, these resources. So it was new for us. And he was a little late coming on. And one person in the group, I was like, is everybody here? And one person in the group was like, oh, we're missing. And they're like, what's his name? And this other gentleman started making sounds that were slurs. He's like, oh, his name is, and something clicked in me. And I was like, absolutely not. No, Get up right now, out.
Yeah.
And that was my reaction, because for me, I was like, this is unacceptable, because to me, it was clearly a racial or cultural slur.
Right.
And he thought everyone was going to laugh and it was going to be funny and this and that. And I was like, no, we are not doing that.
Yeah.
And my blood was boiling a little, and I kind of got he got online. I got the class on a task. I think I left this guy outside for like 20 minutes. I got the class on a task. And then I went out and I said, hey, come with me. And we walked down and I went through the whole scenario. My leadership, team. So obviously someone hired this guy and thought that
Yeah.
they were going to be a great person on
Right.
their team. And I was just like, absolutely not. Like, this person does not fit the values
Yeah.
of our organization. And if we keep him on, we are sending a message that we tolerate this and we don't. And I
Yeah.
was so steadfast in it. And our director at the time, he actually pulled me aside. Great gentleman. I learned so much from this guy. He actually pulled me aside after the fact. And he was like, the fact that you stood your ground on that and were not wavering, and you were so, like, he said, that meant so much to me, knowing that I have the right person
Yeah.
in this seat. Because part of what we're doing when we have new hires is we're making sure that they are absorbing who we are, and we are teaching them who we are as an organization. And that instance, in the moment, I was a little bit scared because I was like, oh crap, like, am I gonna get in trouble for overreacting and embarrassing this guy? But to me, I was like, no, like, and if I do, like, I gotta go, because that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
acceptable.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Jeez. Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, it was gross. I was just like,
Yeah, I could imagine. Like, why would you think that would be okay?
yeah. And the rest of the class, I had others come up to me appreciating, like, I've been in environments where something like that would have gotten swept under the rug. And, the
Yeah.
fact that you guys aren't doing that here. And I was just like, I didn't know how to sweep something like that under the rug. I was like, this
Yeah.
is discrimination, like,
Yeah.
straight
Yeah.
up, clear.
Just so blatant with it too. Like, you just in front of everybody. Like, okay.
Because he had been in scenarios or in
Absolutely.
environments where
Where it's been okay.
that's the way that they talk, and everyone talks like that, and it's okay, and it's oh, he was just joking. No, that's not a joke. That's not how we joke,
Yeah.
So it starts with leadership.
Agreed.
It really does. It could have been easy for me to be like, oh, ha, ha, like, no, we're not, we don't, let's not do that, and then move on. But what that does is just say, we just kind of don't do that.
Exactly. But with your reaction now, whoever was watching, now we don't do that.
We don't
we're
play.
just not having it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just not doing it. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of danger in toxic workplace culture. It starts at the top. Your leaders from the top down are responsible for setting the tone of who the organization is and upholding who the organization is. I want to challenge you, if you are a leader, if you're in a leadership role, take responsibility for creating a positive workplace environment. Now change is possible, but it requires a deliberate effort from both leadership and employees. And if you're the one person out there alone in the sea of attempted change, you may just need to go and get a new job, and when you're looking for a new role, find out about the culture, ask those questions. You're interviewing them too. And I know it can be tough because the job market's tough, all of those things, but just know that if you don't, you're potentially going to end up in a very similar situation just a couple of weeks or months down the road, and you haven't, solved anything. So folks out there, we want to hear your experiences. Join the conversation about workplace culture. When have you experienced a great workplace culture? When have you experienced a very challenging workplace culture? And how were you supported or not supported? How did you react and rectify? Or did you say, you know what, I got to grab my backpack and head on out, right? And as our journal prompt for this week, really take a moment to journal and write about how your workplace is supporting or not supporting your personal well-being. And, if you are in a position where you're benefiting greatly from where you are spending the bulk of your time, which is at work, or are you having some negative consequences from that, from a toxicity standpoint? I
I'll
want
be doing
to,
my journal.
you're
Can't
going to be
wait.
doing your
Oh
journal.
yeah.
So share your notes in the comments, and I want to share and just reiterate that toxic culture is 10 times more likely to cause turnover than compensation. And this isn't just hurting employees. Companies with a strong corporate culture see a 4x increase in revenue growth. Good culture makes sense for businesses, and if a business is not prioritizing culture, they don't care about you. Thanks everybody.
Thanks,
We'll see you next
guys.
week.